And I want to go to you. You have quite a background both competing and working in professional tennis. I saw you on a panel a few months back, and you had some very interesting points about attributes of tennis that pickleball would be wise to emulate, and some characteristics that maybe pickleball would like to avoid. So maybe you can double-click on that and tell us about, what are some insights you've drawn from tennis that we can apply to pickleball?
I always say pickleball is unique and it's its own brand, and we can learn from other best practices, but it is its own brand. That said, I think we can learn a lot from pro tennis's successes and maybe some mistakes. In terms of successes, I think pro tennis has done a fantastic job of creating tentpole events, major tentpole events that are festivals that appeal to all kinds of new audiences. You look at the US Open in tennis, Wimbledon, you look at the Super Bowl, you look at these major events, the Masters, they're brands in and of themselves. And that is essential to the success of any sport. Look at the Miami Open here in this market for 2 weeks. They've actually invited MLP to come and do a 3-day showcase later this week. You're all invited. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we'll have 20 of our best players competing in a round robin in the MLP format. And again, they're trying to program outside courts. They're trying to appeal to new audiences. So tentpole events that create brands, and those tentpole events also create new stars. And pickleball could benefit from more stars and more rivalries. Having top players play each other more often, there's no doubt that rivalries increase the excitement around any sport. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'd say tennis probably does really well, and I think we can learn from. And we saw a lot of that at USA Pickleball and PPA's Nationals in Dallas, a real festival. And in terms of what I would avoid, the second part of your question, it's the cannibalization, it's the alphabet soup. Right? In tennis, there are 7 governing bodies. The 4 Grand Slams, the ITF, the ATP, and the WTA. It's like alphabet soup. So I'm very glad to have one governing body in pickleball. And I think this is why I'm particularly excited about the recent PPA-MLP merger, because we can now create an even more viable, sustainable, healthy ecosystem for all the participants and stakeholders in pickleball, the players, the venues, the sponsors, the manufacturers, the broadcasters. Everyone will be better off thanks to the merger. So I could go on and on with other things, but I'd say those are the 2 highlights of the do's and don'ts.
Okay, I want to ask what you brought up, which was, you said that you had seen a statistic about tennis's revenue relative to other major sports and how the governing bodies, the multiple governing bodies, has sort of played into that.
Thank you. If you look at, there's a graph out there comparing the revenues of all the major sports, NHL, NBA, NFL, PGA, soccer. Tennis, despite its 100 years of rich history and household names and global nature and co-ed nature and all the incredible milestones, tennis is second to last. And it's because tennis cannibalizes itself at times. And if you're reading recent press stories, they're trying to figure it out and where they're going to go next. But it's another reason why commercially the merger between MLP and PPA makes all the sense in the world. 2 distinct brands under one umbrella company. We can go to sponsors and broadcasters with our 2 formats, and based on their objectives and goals, really provide a consolidated product across both formats.
Got it, okay. All right, and so each of these organizations up here, you guys are involved very heavily on both the amateur side and the growth of the professional game. But Tom, I want to go to you. What is the data telling us, just so we can sort of level set here for the audience, what is the data telling us about amateur and participation growth in pickleball?
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you to Robin Duda and the organisers of racquetx for putting on this amazing event. Obviously very proud to be here representing the APP, and delighted that we can do so when we are literally just kind of feet away from a tournament that's currently got 1,500-ish players competing. We're live on ESPN2 right now with our Championship Sunday taking place, which I think speaks to the health of the sport overall. I think in terms of amateur growth and the participation that you've asked about, the APP as a business is driven by data. All of our strategic decisions are taken by people who are using the information that we are generating from research among the pickleball community to really understand what pickleball players want. Last year, we conducted research with YouGov, one of the world's most established research agencies, to understand how many people are playing currently in the US. And that audience number is around about 50 million adult Americans who've played pickleball in the last 12 months. If you ask anybody anecdotally what they know about pickleball, you're going to have at least one person saying, I've played recently. You're going to have somebody who says, I know people who've played. And it is now part of the kind of cultural norm. Pickleball is here to stay because so many people are playing. The average age of a player is around about 35, which dispels the myth that it is an older person's game. And I think really what that shows you is that participation at amateur and recreational level is what's growing this sport. It's why it's so important that we have such a good, strong national governing body driving this at all levels, and a sport particularly that has Olympic aspirations one day needs to have that kind of mass audience that is growing both here in the US and abroad.
So assessing the split between kind of the amateur side and the pro side, how does the APP decide where to allocate its focus?
So again, our business decisions are driven by what we believe the audience wants. So from me as a marketing director, somebody who's working to promote the sport to pickleball players and to the wider sports community, I'm driven by what the audience wants to see. In terms of the way that we go about organizing our events, we see here, for example, we're here in Miami. We got the largest ever pro field for our tournament. We have over 350 pros who tried to get into this tournament. We actually had to run a pre-qualifying event on the Tuesday because so many people are trying to get into those pro brackets. Then we have over 1,000 amateurs who are playing. And really what drives our business is about ensuring that every single player has the best experience possible. So our matches are all refereed. We think that's a really important part of the amateur experience. We want to make sure that players, whether you're playing for money at the pro level or whether you're playing for prestige at the amateur level, that you are leaving with a really good positive experience. And the research that we do post-event tells us that the feedback from players is almost universally positive, something that we're extremely proud of.